He stole my slippers. The notification came through on the Airbnb app around 8:30 p.m. Someone wanted to rent out the apartment tonight. I swiped down the notification bar and read the first line. Mike has made a reservation. Please confirm the booking. I was already in bed, but it wasn't too late for a booking. I didn't mind renting out the place because it helped pay the bills. I clicked the notification to open the app. My phone was slow and annoying, so I kept tapping the screen where the confirm button would be as I waited for it to load. I must have tapped it on the right spot because as soon as the app opened, it said I'd accepted the booking. I got up and took a shower, then changed into some old clothes before heading over to the apartment to clean it up. Mike wanted to start the booking from 10:30 p.m. Again, a little late and didn't give me much time, but it was easy money for little effort. When I reached the front door, he was standing outside with his hands shoved deep in his pockets. He had short black hair and wore thick glasses that gave him a kind of nerdy look. He did look familiar, but I couldn't quite put my finger on why. His face was pale and he seemed a bit nervous. "Are you Mike?" I asked as I approached the apartment building. Yeah. He stepped forward and shook my hand. "I'm Sam," I said. "Sam? Is that your first or last name?" he asked. "First," I replied. "Alright, well, nice to meet you. First name is Sam." What a weird thing to say, I thought, but he seemed a little quirky, so I just thought that's how he was. I opened the main door and motioned for Mike to come in. "You're not going to need anything else out here, right?" I asked him. "No, I've got all I need now, thanks," he replied. Another odd thing to say, but whatever, I thought, and closed the door behind us, and we headed down the corridor to my apartment. "So, what brings you here tonight?" I asked him. "Tonight?" He seemed puzzled. "Yeah, I mean, you booked quite late." "I didn't I? Yeah. I had another place booked, but they cancelled last minute," he explained. "Oh, okay," I said, a little confused. He seemed a bit spaced out, but he'd paid up front, so I figured he was legit. I stopped outside my apartment. "Well, this is the place if you still want to stay," I announced. He didn't respond. I put my key in the lock and opened the door. "Please, take your shoes off and leave them by the door." He didn't say anything again, but he did take his shoes off like I asked, while I slipped off my trainers and put on my slippers. I couldn't help but notice he was staring at my feet the whole time. It made me feel a bit uncomfortable, but as soon as he noticed I had noticed him staring, he looked away. "Follow me," I said, once I had my slippers on. We walked into the living room and he sat down on the sofa immediately and started fiddling with his phone. "So, you're only staying for the night, right?" I asked him, trying to get him to engage with me. "Yep," he said, without looking away from his phone. Thought about what you're going to do about food?" "I'll grab something later," he replied, again not taking his eyes off the screen. "Okay, well, let's go ahead and get you set up with a key then." I went over to the kitchen cupboard, grabbed a set of keys and handed it to Mike. He slipped it into his pocket and went back to tapping away on his phone. So you don't have any luggage or anything?" I asked him. No baggage," he replied with a grin on his face. "Okay, well, let me give you the tour then." I showed him around the apartment, but he only really seemed interested in the kitchen. He was opening cupboards, drawers, and he even wiped down a small stain on the counter with a sponge. He must be a bit OCD, I thought. We headed back to the living room and he sat back on the sofa. "So, what'd you think?" I asked him. Sure, all good. Yeah," he replied, staring at his phone still. "Okay then," I said, and forced a smile, turning to head back into the living room. He was odd, but I didn't have to stick around and look after him. I'd done my bit, so it was time to go. "Alright, I'm gonna leave you to it. Any problems, my number's on the fridge, I told him, pointing towards the kitchen. Yeah, sure, he replied, still not taking his eyes off the phone. I turned and walked out into the corridor and stopped by the front door to put my shoes back on. I took off my slippers and started putting my trainers on. I had about one trainer on when I could have sworn I heard the sound of a camera shutter. I quickly looked towards the living room to see Mike look away and start tapping on his phone again. I couldn't be sure, but I felt like he was taking a picture of me. I decided not to make things awkward and accuse him of anything and left. I did feel a bit uncomfortable leaving him alone in the apartment, but it was only one night after all. I got home about 11:30, put my letters down, made a cup of tea and curled up on the bed with my laptop. I browsed the internet, watched a few videos, checked my inboxes, basic stuff. Airbnb had sent me an email confirming Mike's payment had cleared. I guess I was worried about nothing after all. I fell asleep shortly after that. Next thing I know, my alarm was going off at 6:43 AM. Surprisingly, I felt well rested and peaceful. I unlocked my phone and looked at my notifications. A few more spammy emails, a WhatsApp message from my mum wishing me good morning, I swear that woman never sleeps, and a DM on Airbnb from Mike, received at 6:06. The message read, "Hey, sorry I didn't turn up last night, met up with a few mates and ended up crashing on the sofa at one of theirs. Don't worry, I've still paid for the booking and will leave you a 5-star review. Cheers, Mike." Wait, what? I was puzzled. I reread the message several times before I replied. "Hey Mike, do you mean you went out with friends after I left and didn't end up coming back? If so, that's cool, as long as you locked up the apartment and left the key." My heart and mind were both starting to race and I had to tell myself to chill. Mike probably just got drunk and forgot about meeting me earlier at the apartment. A few minutes later, he replied, "No, I never even ended up coming to your town. I missed my train and by coincidence bumped into a few friends at the station and we went for a few drinks. Not sure what you mean by after I left. Anyway, all the best, mate." Now my heart was racing. If this guy hadn't stayed at my apartment last night, then who the hell had? Then, as I stood there staring at the screen, I noticed Mike's profile picture. I clicked on it to enlarge it. It wasn't the guy from last night. This guy was blonde and built like an NFL player. I grabbed my keys and ran out to my car to drive over to the apartment. My heart and mind really were racing now. What if he'd robbed the place? Or even worse, what if he'd robbed and wrecked the place? I couldn't stop thinking how stupid I was not to check his photo or ID or something. When I got to the apartment, there were crowds of people outside, police and an ambulance. I could just feel it had something to do with my apartment. I parked my car, jumped out and pushed my way to the building entrance where police were blocking the door. "Excuse me," I shouted, trying to push through them. One of the officers put his hand on my chest to stop me and said, "Can't let you in, madam." "But I own one of the apartments," I shouted. "We're conducting an investigation, madam," he replied. "Investigation?" I asked, confused. "Yeah, someone attacked a young woman inside one of the apartments last night." I froze. "What happened?" "Sorry, I can't tell you anything more," he said. I felt sick. What if it was that guy? "Do you have any idea who was involved?" I asked, praying it wasn't the guy I let in last night. "Look, man, if you want to help, keep your eyes open for a nerdy looking, pale skinned guy with thick glasses. A few residents say they saw him hanging around outside and one other said they saw him leaving the apartments around 1 AM. My heart stopped and sank. "Oh my god, that's him!" I blurted out. "Where?" the policeman spluttered, looking around. No, I mean, that's the man I let stay in my apartment last night. The same man you just described. I thought he was there to rent out my Airbnb, but I didn't check his picture or ID before letting him in. I just assumed he was the guy." "Ma'am, what apartment is yours?" the officer asked. 666, I stuttered. "Look, I shouldn't be telling you this, but that's the apartment the young woman was killed in." "Killed?" couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Did you speak to him at all? The guy?" The police officer pulled out his notepad and began to scribble things down. "Yes, I introduced myself to him and he said his name was Mike." "Mike, you say?" repeated the officer. "Yeah, and your name is, ma'am?" he asked. "Sam," I answered. But Mike was the name of the guy who actually made the booking and didn't turn up, not the guy that was actually outside the place." "Okay, look, you're going to have to start from the beginning, Sam, because I'm a little confused," said the officer. So I told him all about my Airbnb and how the real Mike had messaged me that morning apologizing for not turning up. "Right, this is quite a mix-up, Sam. If you ask me, you are lucky to be alive," the police officer said. At that moment, the building door swung open and the paramedics wheeled out a body covered by a white sheet. Seeing it triggered the realization that could be me under there, and I burst into tears. "I'm so sorry," I sobbed. The officer patted me on the shoulder. "Hey, it's not your fault, Sam. You couldn't have known this would happen." Another officer came over. They exchanged a few hushed words until finally the second officer left with the rest of the police. "Okay, Sam, you'll have to stay somewhere else for a few nights, but you can get anything you need from the apartment now." "Alright, I have another house where I live and this is my Airbnb apartment, so there's only a few bits that I really need to grab." "Okay, let's head up," said the officer, and he motioned for me to lead the way, and we went into the building and up to my apartment. When I opened the apartment door, I expected to see a bloodbath, but no, everything looked normal. I went into the living room and it was immaculate. "Listen, you got lucky. The victim was attacked in the kitchen, so the cleanup team was able to pretty much erase all traces of the incident. If it had been in here, on this white carpet, it would have been a different matter," the officer explained. "Yeah, that is lucky, I guess." I tried to see the positive side of all this, but was still shaken up about the whole thing. "What exactly did he do to her?" I asked. "Well, the girl was visiting another resident and had left the apartment to go home when the killer dragged her into your apartment and choked her to death," the officer explained. "Oh my god, that's awful," I exclaimed. "That's not even the worst bit. The sicko cut all her toes off and they weren't able to find them anywhere. Forensics reckon he took them with him, some kind of sick trophy." The officer had this sick and disgusted look on his face, like he had a bad smell under his nose. And I don't blame him. "You're right, that is sick. Is it okay if I look around to see if he's taken anything of mine?" I asked. "Sure, go ahead," he said. "Just try not to touch anything or move things around in the kitchen." I nodded and began looking around the apartment. I didn't have much there. A few spare clothes, some old photos, a toothbrush, and some letters I'd forgotten to take with me from the last time I was there. I picked up the letters and went back to the living room. "Well, everything looks pretty normal and nothing seems to be missing." "Okay, well, if you're about done, I'm going to have to ask you to lock up and head out. Here are the station details and my name. I'm Officer Doyle. You can ask me if you have any questions. We'll be in contact again when we've finished our full investigation," he said. "Alright, thanks, that's great. Do you have any idea how long it might be till I can have my apartment back again though?" I asked. It's likely to be about a week," he said. "I've got a feeling though nobody's going to be rushing to book your apartment anytime soon, Sam." The officer chuckled. He was being way too upbeat for my liking and a little too insensitive, to be honest. I guess he's used to this sort of thing, or maybe that's just how he deals with stuff. I turned around and made my way to the front door with the officer behind me. I was about to reach for the handle when I noticed, oh my god, he stole my slippers.